Welcome to another edition of Inside Guyana. Today in our studio we have a prominent Guyanese, prolific writer in the two of Guyana's daily newspapers. The Stabroeknews is a columnist there, and the News. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming to our program Inside Guyana, Mr. Sasenarine Singh. Sir, welcome to the program Inside Guyana.
Thank you, Rudy. And just a slight correction is the Guyana Chronicle and the News.
Oh, the Chronicle
are the two daily columns that we have, yes.
Oh, so that's Stabroeknews?
No.
Oh, no. I apologize for that.
Thank you.
And thank you for the correction.
No, it's very important to have the records correct.
Well, sir, the first question to our guests in this program Inside Guyana is to tell our viewers, please, a little bit about yourself.
Well, I mean,
where were you, which part of Guyana are you from, where were you born? Probably you have brothers and sisters, which school you attended, and what happened to your life before you entered this studio here today?
Well, I mean, I'm a standard Guyanese person, growing up I grew up mainly in the latter part of the Burnham years and the Hoyt years. That's where I spent most of my youthful days. I went to Queen's College, and then I went off to the University of Guyana and to the United Kingdom to study, where I did a Master's in Finance at the University of Lancaster. I did an executive diploma at London Business School in corporate restructuring. I'm also a chartered accountant, so I spent a lot of time in finance, working in the banking sector, Barclays Corporate, work with the government of Guyana. And right now I work in Washington, D.C. in that area. I really don't want to say because I work with a government agency, but I work in Washington, D.C. now.
Okay, that's in brief. You have parents, brothers, sisters, nobody?
I have my mom. My father's been deceased, and I have one brother, one sister, and so yes, that's about me. I have 3 kids, and we live in Maryland. But I always enjoy coming to New York, where where my mom lives. It's always fun to be in the Richmond Hill area, where you see your
Little Guyana.
Little Guyana. It's really fun to be there.
Well, Mr. Sasenarine Singh, you have been writing recently about the Guyana sugar industry, from what I've been reading in the newspapers. And I think let us focus in this interview more on the Guyana sugar industry, since that is a very important sector for the economic development of Guyana and generally for the lives of many Guyanese. And it seems to be going down the drain here. Can you just give us a general overview of what is happening in the Guyana sugar industry right now?
Well, I mean, I think there's a big question that needs to be answered by policymakers, both past and present, meaning both the former government and the current government. And that question is, can we turn around the Guyana sugar industry to make it at least cash neutral?
No. You're asking a question to the Guyana government. I'm asking you a question. Give us your characterization of the sugar industry as of now.
Well, it's in a coma. Bottom line, Gaisuku is in a coma.
No, sugar industries cannot be in coma. Human beings can be in a coma. We're going to talk about healthcare later on. Let us talk about the sugar industry.
Well, if I may rephrase that, it's in a financial coma, meaning it's bleeding more than it's repairing. So it's losing more income than it's earning. So it's having what you call a cash outflow out of the industry. And that cash outflow has to be met by the government of Guyana. This year they've pumped $12 billion into the industry to keep it afloat. Now, you can do that for a short term, but you cannot do something like that for the long term.
Right now, is the sugar industry making profits or not?
No, it's making a loss since...
okay, how much loss has it made in the, let's say, per ton of sugar?
Okay. we got to look at this in context. In 1993, it was costing Gaisuku about 25 cents to make a pound of sugar, 25 US cents to make a pound of sugar. We were earning under the preferential price agreement then above 25 cents. So we were making profit. That was 1993. Fast forward now to 2014, where it is costing Gaisuku on average 40 cents to make a pound of sugar now. And our average income per pound is about 17 US cents. So obviously our cost is more than double the revenue that you get from the sale of that product. So we're definitely making a loss, and that loss has happened for almost 7-8 years now.
Okay, so the sugar industry is making a loss.
Yes.
And you as an economist would be able to identify factors that cause that loss. What are some of the factors that you think contribute towards the poor efficiency, or put it mildly, incompetence of the sugar industry?
I think we made many bad decisions along the way. As a financial analyst, I believe honestly we failed to effectively manage the cash flow of the industry, meaning the cash coming in and the cash going out. Secondly, we failed to follow standard practices that we inherited from our prior generations in the sugar industry. Let me give you a case in point. In the industry, it is standard that they have a policy called flood fallowing, which you do. In Booker's days, they used to do 15% of the land, they used to flood it under 6 to 9 inches of water and leave it to lie for about 6 months. And then they will drain the land, plow it, and then replant the ratoons. And the productivity goes up almost 40% before where you left it. So every year, 15% of the land was going through that process under the Booker Tate system in colonial times. That system continued in most of the 70s, but then it started to deteriorate in the 80s, the 90s. And by now, we, under Rat Singh's leadership, who was the previous general manager.
Who is Rat Singh?
He was the previous CEO under the previous government. He is now being let go for good reasons, but under his leadership, land was working for as long as 12 years, when the standard in the system is about 5 to 6 years.
But Rat Singh was only CEO, as far as I understand, for 3 or 4 years.
But as I said to you,
and you're talking about 12 years.
Yeah,
now.
no, but the mismanagement of the industry started since the 80s. So I'm not here only blaming Rat Singh.
Okay.
There was a short period when we had a good respite, which was around when Desmond Hoyt brought in Booker Tate around 1990. And that we had a good maybe 12 years of Gaisuku where it ran at a profit. It ran at a profit. It was paying its way.
So what was some, now that you said it ran at the profit, and now that profit has been diminished or decreased substantially to a loss, what are some of the factors? You have been following the sugar industry in Guyana for some years, and you'll be able to identify what are some of the factors that cause that.
Well, the main factors is that we lost the preferential market. The European Union bought about 90% of our production.
At what price?
It was about 28 cents a pound. And we were producing, as I said, using old factories at about 25 cents a pound. So we were making money, not a lot of money, but we were making money. But the idea of Gaisuku, or the sugar industry, is not only about making money, it's a socio-economic industry. It provides a livelihood for 69,000 rural folks, people who have very few alternatives.
Have you ever examined the reasons why that is so? I can probably throw some light on this here.
Yeah, I heard you're a sugar man.
No, I worked in the sugar industry for 3 years. I worked in the personnel department. in Diamond. I became the branch chairman of NASI at Diamond. And I also worked in the laboratory as a lab technician. So I understand the sugar processes. But I'm talking about the history now. That led to so many people becoming dependent on sugar for their existence. During the colonial period, you had the plantation owners that wanted to reduce the cost of labor. Therefore, they had to have excess labor force. So you can say, look, if you don't do the job now for this price, we're going to fire you and we have people ready to take your job. So how they did that is basically, from my research, they avoid investing in other sectors of Guyana's economy. For example, the forestry sector. The sugar plantation owners never wanted or weren't keen in expanding operations into other sectors of the economy, like mining and forestry and fishing and all of that. Because Guyana has a very limited labor force. So if you bring more people away from the sugar industry, the cost of labor is going to increase. People are going to ask for more money because you can't fire them easily. So it's a supply and demand of labor situation that actually led to the situation here right now. However, I hope that as things are changing, we can have more people being encouraged to go into different sectors and leave the sugar industry as it is. Never mind, right now they're dependent, but that's a historical case. So let's go back to your answer.
Well, the dependency is actually dropping because in 25 years ago, there was close to 28,000 people who worked directly with Gaisuku. And today, it's only 16,000 people who are working directly. And when you add those who are indirectly involved, the total is 69,000. So it is actually, the dependency on sugar itself is actually declining. But it's declining with using attrition, meaning natural decline, not a forced decline. And that's expected because sugar, and we need to be people who don't understand the sugar industry need to be very clear about this. Cane cutting is semi-slavery. It is a very difficult job. That's why sometimes I really am pained when people are envious of the salaries that a cane cutter get, because it is one of the hardest possible job a human being can do.
Okay, on that note, and you being someone who studied the sugar industry very well, would be able to recommend mechanization like is being done in different countries. In Cuba, for example, sugar industry, like the harvesting, is being done mechanically. So why can't we mechanize the sugar industry in Guyana?
Well, first of all, it will cost a lot of money. It is happening. We've already bought, since 2009, several we call cane harvester, mechanized cane harvesters. And they're working on all the new lands that were being developed, especially in Skeldon and Blairmont. Skeldon, as you know, went through a metamorphosis of some kind, whereby they had a rapid expansion in the land under kale cultivation, and then they had this state-of-the-art sugar factory. Well, I put state-of-the-art in inverted commas because we can explain that later why that is so. But so there was what happened. I mean, as you were talking about history. Around 2005, the European Union was taken to court by the Brazilians and basically saying you can't offer these ACP countries, meaning Guyana, Africa, Caribbean, Pacific countries, you cannot offer them these fancy prices, these preferential prices, and you're not offering it to us. And they won the case. So the European Union had to abide by the ruling of the World Court. So this is the reality here. They told us early o'clock that prices, this thing is going to go away. We were in a coma, as I said, asleep for a while. We lost about 5 years trying to pretend that this price will not go away. However, as they say in a boxing ring, a boxer could always be confident until he get the first hit. However, we got our act together and we developed something called the Sugar Action Plan to modernize the industry. One of it being that we are going to expand Skeldon Estate and we're going to move production to 400,000 tons when the natural maximum that we had in the industry was around 300,000 tons. But we said we're going to go beyond that and we're going to take a lot more of the products.
You mean the actual maximum output?
The natural maximum since independence to now has always been around 300. We had years when we had 320 and
more,
stuff.
Yeah, we had more.
But the natural maximum, right? I mean, you know, there's some years when the weather will be.
But we had a productive capacity of 450,000 tons.
But we never achieved it.
Yes,
we never
rarely achieved it.
Yes. Yeah. So there was this plan to use Berbice in particular because it was more productive. To expand production to the point that we can bring the unit cost of production down. The problem is Skeldon Sugar Factory, rather than being the primary cause for the reduction of the unit price, ended up becoming the primary cause for the rapid increase in the cost of production because it was badly built.
Maybe after some time it's going to offset the initial investment.
Well, this factory was built in 2009. We started production, and up to now it cannot meet its rated capacity. It's underperforming.
Why is this so?
I think the team, it's like building a school. You know, you can't ask somebody who build roads to build a school when they have no core competence. There was two companies that was in the mix. One was from India, which had a core competence of building sugar factories around the world. And they were going to build it cheaper than the Chinese. But we decided to go with a Chinese company that never built a sugar factory. Now, so
why was that decision taken, in your opinion?
I mean, that is a very hard one to decipher. I'll tell you why. Because I spoke to people on the former Gaisuku board, and they said their hands were tied because they got political directions from office of the president. That time it was the president at that time was Mr. Jagdeo. So the board says their hands were tied. So it was a political decision. I don't understand how a political decision can be made to influence one of the greatest economic investment in a nation. And because of that misdecision or that maladministration of that situation, we are now ended up with a cost of production of averaging 40 cents. So this is the situation. Production cost was going up and the unit revenue was coming down. So there's a gap now, and this gap is where the state taxpayers from all across Guyana, people from the rice industry, people from the public service industry, the corporate businesses like DDL, they all have to be paying taxes, and those taxes got to be lifted, and they have to now fill that gap to keep this industry alive.
So basically, you're saying that they're bailing out the sugar industry.
We are bailing out the sugar industry.
At the expense of social development, probably.
Well, it's a chicken and egg situation, because if you take the economic decision at this point in time, then you'll be destroying you'll have a social implosion in rural Guyana, especially the Demerara and Berbice. So you have to weigh the cost of that social implosion versus the cost that you're pumping into the industry now. Now, that can't be the solution. I don't believe closing Gaisuku and having this social implosion is the answer. What is the answer is getting your value chain, you have to go into the industry and you have to do two things. You have to track where all the money is going. And I think Gaisuku has had a poor history of tracking where its money is going, meaning analytics, understanding the costs for the entire process in each factory, and not trying to commingle all of it into a Gaisuku database. You want to know what Skeldon is costing the country and what Skeldon is gaining for the country. Vice versa, you do to Enmore in every factory.
So are you saying this doesn't exist?
It doesn't, because what happens
No,
is...
each factory is a separate entity.
I agree, but
And they have their separate accounting.
But they do. What you have is you have things like head office costs, marketing costs, shipping costs. Those things are not distributed scientifically to the factory to be able to get a true cost. You want to have a true cost versus a true revenue per factory, so you can see which factories are producing more efficiently than which, and which factory are really hurting the industry.
No, but that is a simple calculation. You have the selling price of sugar, you have the production of sugar, volume of production of sugar from each estate, and you have the cost of production on each estate.
But
so if you take the...
But you don't have to add in what you call common costs.
No, you have the overhead, the overhead for selling and marketing the product overseas.
Shipping also.
Then there is a unit cost that can be transferred or in the calculation.
Well, this is what I'm recommending.
Onto that.
This is what I'm saying is that what I'm getting from Gaisuku is that they have what you call an industry cost. This is what it's costing the industry. This is what we're gaining from the industry, and this is the loss. What I'm saying is that we need to make a decision on, do we need to keep all 70 estates? That's the decision that needs to be made. Because the idea is to reduce the loss as much as possible. I do not believe at this point in time, at least within the next 3 years, that Gaisuku can be cash neutral or even cash positive. But the bottom line is how to start reducing the bleeding and to start the healing.
I'm sure that you, having researched the Guyana sugar industry for some time, you might have some solutions to recommend. What are some of the solutions you think can be applicable here?
Well, I think what's very important is that we strategically reposition the industry. Now, we have to have a better understanding, and you as a sugar man will know this. The most important time, there's 3 processes that you really have to pay keen attention to. One is the productivity of the field, and that has to be tracked very carefully. In the old days, in the Booker's days, they had a specialist that came down, and that was his job.
You mean tons sugar per ton cane, or tons cane per ton sugar?
Well, the first thing you do is, before you go to that, we're talking about the fields here. We're talking about how much cane is being produced per acre or hectare.
Yeah, the cane can be...
So ton cane per hectare is right now.
Right.
Now, once you can track those numbers are coming down, and also sucrose.
Together, the sucrose content.
Right, the sucrose content, you have the labs, as you said, you used to work in a lab. In the Booker's days, they used to test for these things by each block of land.
Yes,
you
correct.
wanted to see, and the minute you see these things are coming down,
You take action.
you take action. You either do what you call
You would fertilizer more, or you do some kind of...
exactly. You know, but I mean,
following.
fertilizer after a while have negative equity, because you can pack fertilizer and
No, but you have, that's where the observation comes in.
Right. So, but you need that. You need to have more what you call field rangers watching that part. That's the most important part, because if you do not have good quality cane on the land, you will never have productivity. Then the second thing you need to look at is the productivity of the factory. But before you go to the productivity of the factory, you need to watch that time, because in the Booker's days, they had something they used to track called when it was the optimal time to cut the cane. Right. When the sucrose content was maximum.
Yes.
Now you need to be able to get that cane out of that ground into the factory and crushed at the shortest possible time. And that is where I believe strongly that the industry needs to work closely with GAU, the Sugar Union. Because if GAU goes on a strike or GAU works against that short window when you rip the cane and crush it,
lie down there.
that is where you lose billions,
you lose
not millions, billions.
Yes.
So that process has to be well taken care of, and you need to work with the field foreman and the factory foreman in particular to make sure that process is almost perfect. Then, of course, we got to be watching our ton canes per ton sugar, which is the factory productivity. So those three areas is what I believe we can pay a lot of attention, a lot more attention to. We got to stop this thing. I believe field managers should be more in the field rather than out of the field. Factory managers need to be walking the floor more, understanding the challenges in the industry. But we also need a period of recapitalization, meaning some of these factories would need recapitalization. We need also to start moving towards value-added products.
Now, before we go on to that, are you aware of any, as an economist, I would recommend a cost reduction program.
Yes.
Are you aware of any cost reduction program being recommended or being implemented by this government, this new coalition government or the previous government?
I think they're watching the value chain, but the point is, I've heard that the new chairman has said that he's taken a hands-off approach, meaning allowing the professional managers in the industry to do their work rather than interfering on a day-to-day basis that was happening before.
Yeah, but they've been doing their work and we have lost money. The industry is going down. So there must be some kind of intervention here. Not basically, what he's saying, stop them from doing their work, but monitor, make sure that they have a cost reduction program in place. To say, for example, you've been using X tons of fertilizer per acre.
Well, one of my recommendations,
we have been getting no results. Why don't we reduce the fertilizer volume here usage and see we're going to cut costs? If we're using, let's say, these kinds of pumps or the factory equipment, XYZ, and we can avoid using it because you're going to charge depreciation of the machinery and equipment as part of the cost. So why don't we try to reduce that?
Well, one of my recommendations is that we re-establish what we call an inspectorate department that will be looking for wastage in fuel, wastage in agrochemicals, wastage in fertilizer, wastage of time. Yes. Because time, measuring and paying for time is a big problem in the industry. There's a lot of time wasting happening in this industry. So that's what I recommend, a special inspectorate department. The other thing that I recommend is that we do more agro-energy. Gaisuku could make a lot of money off of agro-energy. Skeldon.
Now you're talking about diversification from sugar.
No, not diversifying, because bagasse is an essential part of the sugar production process.
It has always been.
Right, but we're now using it now to make energy out of it, which can be sold. There's a captive market.
Oh, so it can be sold?
Yeah, it's sold to GPL, and you can make money out of it. The other thing that Gaisuku can do, as we're on...
I understand they were also talking about producing ethanol.
Yes.
Or they actually produce ethanol now, is correct?
They have what we call a pilot plant at Albion.
No, pilot.
So the pilot plant, basically, it's a small plant. And but it's just what they were testing the market. But I think it can be done because the technical competence for ethanol is right next door in Brazil. We could import that knowledge and utilize land such as the Kanji Basin. Guyana has 10,000 acres of land that is sitting idle in the Kanji Basin that can be used to develop what we call ethanol cane, specifically for the ethanol industry. Now, in 2011, I remember being part of a group where we recommended that it became mandatory that we have what you call E10 ethanol policy, whereby it becomes mandatory whatever ethanol is produced by Gaisuku can be blended by the oil companies with the gasoline to be using in our cars. We do it in America here all the time. So,
do you have any specific numbers in that, cost and selling price and all of that stuff?
Well, ethanol...
So yeah, we can produce ethanol, but if the cost of producing it is going to be exorbitant, then it doesn't make sense. Does it make economic sense?
Well, I mean, they have to do what we call a pre-feasibility study.
Right.
That has not been done.
Okay, that's the...
And that's very, very important to establish that. But you got to also remember, ethanol, the price will fluctuate. So we will try to, if you're doing it for the domestic market, it doesn't matter what the world price is, because...
No, now that we do not have any specific numbers as to cost of production, we'll be wasting time to
Yes.
continue talking about that. Let us talk about some other aspects of value added within the sugar industry.
Well,
like packaging, probably.
yeah.
You want to say something?
I am a firm advocate for packaging, because raw sugar is dead. And this is something that people have to understand.
I don't know what you mean by dead. Sugar cannot die. So let us
Well,
let
dead
us be specific
financially.
here so that our viewers can understand clearly what you want to say.
Dead financially. Raw sugar. Anybody who's in the business now of producing raw sugar in bulk, so that is what I wanted to say. Raw sugar in bulk, they're wasting time. You have to produce, Gaisuku has to produce sugar with a clear end plan, which is one, we want to produce sugar in packaged products. In the small sachets, you know those small sachets we put in our coffee? Right now, we're getting average 17 cents for the bulk sugar.
Per pound.
Per pound. If we can produce those sachets, and we have done it in 2007, I've actually used the Guyana Pegasus, the Demerara Gold small sachets. We can earn on average US 91 cents per pound if we can produce those sachets and export it to the tourism market in the Caribbean and hopefully penetrate markets like the United States, Colombia, wherever else they use cane sugar. We can do that. Now, we have 2 packaging plants in Guyana that have the capability to do packaging from sachets all the way up to 10 kilograms. Actually, one of them can even do 25 kilograms, but 10 kilograms, the bigger the packaging, the less rewarding it is. The smaller it is, the more returns for the industry. So you want to stay on the small end. So sachets is the small 1 serving per cup sachet is the market you really want to capture, because you're going to be getting about 91 cents per pound if you do it in that form.
Is that after taking out the cost of producing the sachets?
No, the 91 cents is
It's
what
only
you
for
earn.
sugar.
Yeah, revenue.
No, I'm talking about, but you have to pay for the paper, the packaging
No,
material.
that's what you sell it for. That's what you sell it for to the market,
Okay. So
right? But so even if you add in the paper and stuff, raw sugar is being produced in Guyana at 40 cents. You could add another 10 cents for all these incrementals. You still will make money if you do it in sachets.
now there is no specific feasibility study also.
It was done in 2007 and we made money out of it. The reason why...
No, I'm talking about the feasibility study.
But you don't need to do a feasibility study because you've already done it. You've already sold it to the Caribbean market and it was successful. The only problem why we couldn't continue it is because we were not producing enough to fulfill our bigger market, our preferential market. And we lost a little bit of that market. What we need to do, but the other thing that caused us to back off from that Demerara Gold brand is, we went to court on it and we lost the case. Gaisuku lost the case. So they're now trying to repackage it as something called Enmore Crystals. And the reason why Enmore Crystals is the name is because there's 2 packaging plants in Guyana, one at Blairmont, which is the smaller one, produces about 8,000 tons of packaged sugar. And the one at Enmore that was designed for 40,000 tons of packaged sugar, but it's only now could produce about 32,000 tons. So in total, Guyana can produce 40,000 tons of packaged sugar, which will give us much more than 17 cents a pound that we get if we export bulk sugar.
What are the areas you think we can investigate or embark on to make sugar more profitable in Guyana, in addition to the packaging?
Well, I know this is a controversial thing, but I'm a strong advocate to I've done a preliminary analysis per industry, per estate, sorry, and I've arrived at the conclusion that the estates that are performing well are Albion, Blairmont, Rose Hall. Rose Hall, we can possibly merge the factory with Albion and even make it more efficient. And between that merged estate and the Blairmont estate, they will break even in this condition, even in these horrible conditions today. Kaisuku is bleeding because of Skeldon Sugar Factory and Skeldon Sugar Estate. It's 57 cents a ton production there. Even though the average in the industry is 40 cents, Skeldon is 57 cents. It's bleeding. I believe we need urgently either the Brazilians or the Indians to take over Skeldon, not Gaisuku.
Why you want foreigners to come and take over something? Can't we do it ourselves? Don't we have competent people?
I think we don't understand that technology enough.
What technology?
The technology that was put there by the Chinese.
Oh.
We understand the other factors.
So we're going to bring Brazilians now to understand the Chinese technology?
No, they use these technologies more than us. It was provided as a state of the art.
Why can't we send people from Guyana to go and train there?
It will require
and
some
then come back?
investment too, which I do not think we have the capability to do those investments, to turn that factory around. It needs some amount of cash. It needs lots of talent. And it needs to be, you need to have what we call a restructuring plan for Skeldon.
So whoever thought about Skeldon Sugar Factory didn't think about all these things?
Unfortunately, as I said, in my opinion, it was a political decision that was not thought through with enough skills.
You mean it was a foolish political decision, correct? If it wasn't thought through.
It wasn't thought through enough. That's the question. That's the answer.
Yeah, it is a stupid decision. And
so it's actually, Skeldon is one of the things that is actually hurting the industry the most. So my training as a restructurer, I did restructuring of agricultural companies when I was in England, is that you have to find the portion of the sword that is hurting the most, and you have to take drastic actions. I'm not suggesting closing down Skeldon. I'm suggesting privatizing it to export companies either in India or Brazil, to look at that entire value model and making it valuable again, because it's not.
You mean privatizing it for them to look at it, or?
Well, it becomes their business. The loss will be theirs, the gains will be theirs.
Or just privatizing it?
Yes, Skeldon only. I'm not saying
Skeldon.
Gaisuku, because I believe Albion, Rose Hall, Blairmont, and more where the headquarters will be, they're all very profitable. My other biggest fear factor is West Demerara. It is also a very unproductive area.
So close it down if it can't make money.
Well, you gotta do a review to see why it's so unproductive. And I know we're doing a commission of inquiry now.
So we're going to waste some more money to find out why we're wasting money.
We don't need to waste money, because I think they did a commission of inquiry in Guyana.
Yes, they spent about 70 million Guyana dollars on that. What is the result of that inquiry?
My understanding is that the results are with the Minister of Agriculture, and he is supposed to present the recommendations to Cabinet and then to Parliament.
Are you aware of some of those recommendations?
It's still a private document. No, I don't. No, but I think in about 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, the nation will be advised, and I think we should wait for that period of time, because we've waited years to turn around the industry. I don't think 3 weeks is going to kill us.
And what do you anticipate will come out of that, from your experience?
I suspect, one, they will recommend that Rose Hall and Albion will be merged as one estate. I also suspect they will ask for the whole West Demerara estate to be merged as one. I hope they recommend that we privatize Skeldon Sugar Factory and the lands there. Because we got to remember, at Skeldon already, 4,000 acres of that land is already privately owned by private people.
Cane farmers.
Yes, cane farmers. And all those new lands that were developed at Skeldon are being reaped with mechanized harvesters. So Skeldon is already on its way, but the factory is holding its back, you know. And that thing is a technological disaster. It's a technological disaster. You know, it cost us 44 billion Guyana dollars to build that factory. We spent another $3 billion trying to find the errors and fix the errors, and still it cannot produce at its rated capacity, even half of its rated capacity. It is, in Guyanese parlance, it's a white elephant.
Okay, Mr. Sasenarine Singh, expert in the sugar industry in Guyana. We are coming towards the end of our interview, and I'm sure you have a few more important things to say about the sugar industry to our viewers. Can you please address the viewers of our ITV program inside Guyana and tell them whatever you feel you should tell them more about the sugar industry in Guyana?
Well, there's not much more to say, but what is very important that people have to understand is we all have to come together to like save the sugar industry. And the reason for this is sugar is a significant income earner for Guyana, even though it's going through these turmoils. Sugar in 2014 earned $88 million for the treasury. It's significant foreign currency because you as an economist, you would know through the balance of payment, exports is where you earn a significant portion of your foreign reserves, which you then use to pay for your imports. So whether we like it or not, sugar, the Six Sisters, as President Granger spoke about, sugar, rice, bauxite, gold, seafoods, timber, these industries are vital. I mean, we all talk about a dream of moving to alternative industries, you know, emerging industries. But we have to understand, before we can move to those emerging industries, we got to get one thing right, which is cheap and reliable electricity supply. And until we get that fixed, we got to work with what we got, which is the Six Sisters. And we got to try to make them more efficient. They're also, these Six Sisters is what employs the bulk of the Guyanese people. Sugar industry is the largest employer in Guyana. So we got to understand that even though sugar is making a loss, $15 billion this year, it is still vitally important to the socioeconomic life of Guyana. If sugar gets a cold, Guyana gets a flu. That's a definite thing. And hence we need to protect the sugar industry. I believe that with proper leadership and careful management of the processes, with a vision of basically strategically repositioning the industry, I think we will be able to at least break even. That's my vision, break even, because I don't think there's a lot of profits you can make out of sugar. And even what has happened, the land is in such a way that we cannot mechanize all the land. We can't, because of some of the way the Dutch beds are made. It's very expensive to convert those beds to the English kind of bed, which is more accommodating for mechanized harvesting. The ideal model that I see is 55% of the land being mechanized, 45% being manually reaped. And that will still employ about 8,000 to 10,000 cane cutters. So, I mean, you know, it will still be there as an income, a revenue, income stream for families on the sugar belt. So I'm saying that sugar should not be allowed to, and I don't believe, you know, if we have people like Moses Nagamutu and David Granger in government, I don't think they will allow sugar to go by the wayside.
May I share with you on this point of sugar? Sugar is very close to me. My ancestors worked in the sugar industry, my grandfather, my father for some time, and I myself. And in 1974, when I was in high school, I wrote a poem
Wow.
dedicated to the cane cutters. And since you mentioned that, you reminded me of that poem. Let me share that with you and our viewers in this program. And it goes like this. So normally I would put on my cane cutter clothes and would come in my cutlass on stage, and I performed many times this, dramatized this poem many times in Guyana.
So let's hear it.
In the sugar industry, I used to go around the country and recite my poem on trailers and tractors and all of that. It goes like this. Cane cutters. If you hear the treatment cane cutters get, you may shiver. But if they remain ununited, they will suffer. So workers, please put your heads together, for one day you will achieve victory forever. He labors so much on this land. He never sits down, but always stands, toiling with a tool grasped in one hand. Now he might be old, but started as a lad, fetching cane, guarding his head with only a pad. If you were in his place, you would have never been glad. Starting in the mornings as early as 2, coming back in the evening with his skin black and blue. This is no farce, but is very, very true. These people work regardless of the weather. If you check, their hands may seem to be like leather. So, you go and listen to their story. You will surely quiver. Thank you.
Thank you, Rudy. That captures exactly the point why I made it my personal mission to be an advocate to keeping the sugar industry open, even though changes will have to happen. Because I think too many people who walk the corridors of power on both sides of the political divide clearly do not understand what you just said. They clearly do not understand what it is. And this is another myth that a lot of people don't realize. The sugar industry have people who are doing that kind of job from both the Afro-Guyanese community and the Indo-Guyanese community. I've seen cane cutters in Wales, Potentia, who are Afro-Guyanese men. In Berbice also, it's not only an Indian industry, it's a Guyana industry. And there's thousands of people who depend on that industry to eat every day. And it's very, very important that thinkers have to step back and stop thinking narrow and think about the broad socio-economic impact of the industry with the vision of saving the industry. And that vision, I would say, is cut down into 4 things. Revenue enhancement. We got to go all the way to make sure we can maximize our revenue with things like what you say, value added and so forth. Cost reduction, and we talk about how we can have a cost reduction plan or program. Liability reduction. The industry right now owes $82 billion in debt. We need to have some kind of a relief from the central government to be able to address that, and lastly, improve coordination of the entire value chain from the start to the end. A factory should not be working when a manager says it must work. It must be working when the cane is ready to be reaped and to be produced. And that is where you need some kind of project management.
Optimal time.
Project management has to come back to that industry. It was there. I think it slipped a lot, but if we can fix those things, I think Gaisuku will survive.
Well, Mr. Sasenarine Singh, we want to thank you very much for coming to the program in St. Guyana. On that note, we want to end our program here today. And it was nice having you in our studio. We're looking forward to having you in the future here to talk about maybe not sugar, maybe something else. I know you're a very prolific writer. I'll be continuing to watch or read your articles in the newspapers.
Thank you. And it was a pleasure being here.
Thank you.
It was long overdue. You remember how long you've asking me to come, and
yes,
it's never happening. But thank you very much.
You're such a busy man. I'm glad we finally catch up with you here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you for watching This is Dr. Rudy Jadoopat reporting for ITV, the program Inside Guyana. Until next time, thank you.